What's up everyone, Alex here. To say that the 16-bit era of JRPGs was special for me and a whole bunch of other people is a bit of an understatement, with fan favorites such as Final Fantasy IV and VI released during this time. But out of all of these games, one name keeps getting mentioned as the ultimate JRPG, and that is Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger took us on a wild adventure across space and time, alongside memorable characters that we've deeply missed since. It also helped that it had one of the most fun and unique combat systems at the time, where you faced enemies on the field itself. It's been literal decades since, and while everyone has attempted to capture this lightning-in-a-bottle moment, Square Enix included, none have truly reached its peaks. And to be fair, with a dream team composed of the creators of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and Dragon Ball Z at the helm, I think it's reasonable to say that it's an impossible feat. But what's so great about having to defy the impossible is that it pushes people to create things that are special and unique in and of themselves. Such was the goal of one Matthias Linda, who desired to capture as much of the magic of 16-bit JRPGs and blend this with modern sensibilities. The resulting game is Chained Echoes, a solo endeavor that had him placing every single pixel for every tile and character, writing dialogue and rearranging every story beat, down to creating the unique battle system that you see before you. But one has to wonder, can Chained Echoes meet the huge expectations people have of a game seemingly built upon the nostalgia of a bygone era? Kickstarted in 2019, Chained Echoes is developed solely by Matthias Linda, featuring music composed by Eddie Marianocro and published by Deck 13, who provided this review code shown running on Steam. The game is also available on Switch, PS4, and Xbox One, and will also be available on Game Pass. Perhaps the biggest deal about Chained Echoes to me is the lack of experience points and leveling system. And granted, that's not unique to Chained Echoes, there are other games that have tried this, but none have actually done this to the degree that Chained Echoes does. Simply put, by eliminating experience points and leveling, Chained Echoes manages to keep its difficulty in check, delivering us a very unique and strategic combat experience that has us really thinking about our builds and the way we compose our characters. It's because of this that getting used to the gameplay might get confusing, especially for people who rely on overleveling to overcome a game's challenges. But what's actually very interesting is that grinding is still here, it's just present in a very different form. For example, if you want to be more resilient and are able to damage enemies a bit more effectively, all you need to do is to just grind for money and materials to upgrade or buy brand new weapons and armor. Simple as that. And if you really think about it, what are you doing in JRPGs in addition to gaining experience and leveling? You're also grinding for the money to improve your gear. It's just that Matthias decoupled both of those to allow other players to play around with the strategy, while also allowing fans who love grinding to be able to do just that. I actually explored this quite deeply during my gameplay, and I found myself going back to earlier areas just to try this out. And sure enough, my powerful weapons and armor basically made a lot of the earlier encounters a bit trivial, having me one-shot some of the game's earlier enemies just to prove that I have indeed become powerful. And I think that's kind of important, especially when you're trying to say that you're eliminating XP and leveling. There needs to be a feeling that you're getting more powerful, or else, what's the point? And I can certainly confirm that Chained Echoes does that. What's also unique about Chained Echoes is its overdrive system. I've actually gone into deeper detail as to what this overdrive system is, but what it boils down to is that you're essentially trying to keep a cursor in the middle of this overdrive gauge. And if you're in this sweet spot, you deal more damage, you get less damage, and your skills cost less. Whereas if you're overheated, you'll take more damage, and that's not great. One of the questions I also wanted to ask is how this overdrive system affects regular enemies. In order to fully understand why this system was implemented, however, you'll first need to know that you'll be facing far less enemies in each area when compared to other JRPGs with random encounters or visible enemies. That's because every single area in Chained Echoes only has a specific number of enemies, which respawns whenever you fast travel or reach a settlement. But what these infrequent encounters also means is that every enemy group you face can be designed to ask you to employ a specific kind of strategy that's unique to that group. For example, early in the game, I faced some ghosts that really beat the crap out of me, and I had no idea how to beat them. Until, of course, that I noticed that the enemy was creating a shield based off of the very first attack that I inflict on them. So, for example, if I hit it with a magic attack, it would basically create a shield that would absorb any magic attacks. This is just one really good example of how Chained Echoes wants you to really think about your composition and builds and how you want to arrange your party. And I think this is really brilliant. In a way, it kind of made me think of how I was arranging my characters and what kind of abilities they would have to bring during battle, and it placed so much more importance on strategy and tactics that I really greatly appreciate. A lot of the times in JRPGs when I'm overpowering enemies, I just mash like the accept button and just kind of just try to pummel them as fast as possible. But in Chained Echoes, every encounter it seems special, and I have to really think about my composition and how to engage a specific set of enemies. That said, if the challenge seems overwhelming to you, there are multiple toggles in the game to allow for a more easier experience. So don't just think that you're stuck playing the game in a particular way. And even then, despite the difficulty that you face, you're still able to run away from battle, though boss battles are a different thing altogether. When you do fall in battle, you can retry them, which will take you to your menu to allow you to change your loadout and rearrange your characters. There's also a light class-based element to Chained Echoes, and you're probably seeing that there are mecha in this game, and that in and of itself has a whole different system that makes that kind of gameplay unique. I probably already said way too much about the gameplay, but what you really just need to know is that every facet of Chained Echoes gameplay has been thought out from top to bottom. In all the years that I've been making YouTube videos, I don't think I've ever actually talked about the base encounter design when it comes to just the regular enemies that you encounter in a dungeon. But here we are with Chained Echoes, which tries to do something so much more to make these battles just as meaningful as the bosses. And that's not even talking about the bosses, because they all have some really interesting mechanics as well. Simply put, if you've been clamoring for a turn-based system that feels very satisfying to play, that has lots of things to modify and upgrade and tinker with, Chained Echoes has you covered. The story of Chained Echoes begins in the middle of a tenuous peace agreed upon between three nations. This truce is broken as one nation stages an assassination that plunges the entire continent into war once again. In the middle of this strife are a motley group of adventurers whose motivations seemingly align with the goal of bringing a swift end to the brewing conflict. Simply put, the story of Chained Echoes cleverly takes story beats from JRPGs like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, and uses them to subvert our expectations. These homages naturally only work on folks familiar with these iconic scenes, though I suspect that people unfamiliar with these will still find that the story moves at a fairly brisk pace. Betraying the brightly colored art style of the game are dark moments that punctuate the storytelling, showing the brutality of war, and, in the game's later sections, the darkness hiding in plain sight. I found the story of Chained Echoes to be one that I enjoyed particularly because it constantly moved me from one locale to the next, with a pleasing pace that cuts through any potential monotony that could set in. That said, some events and dialogue might seem like it came out of nowhere. Given how one person was able to accomplish so much already, the quality of its story is something that I'm quick to excuse. That aside, I do want to bring up that the dialogue lacks some of the idiosyncrasies found in spoken dialogue from native English-speaking countries. In both the best English scripts and localized text, The dialogue is often used to do a lot of the heavy lifting to provide some characterization and flavor to the different members of an ensemble cast. Whether it's a difference in cadence, a more casual tone, or even an educated response, better written dialogue could speak volumes about a character just as much as a dedicated sequence highlighting them. And it creates a variance within the narrative that makes things feel fresh on the regular. And as I said, this adventure wouldn't be worth it had it not been for the gorgeous environments you can explore from beat to beat. Unlike other upcoming JRPGs of its type, the style of shading and rendering that Matthias employs in each scene makes understanding its environments easy, making elements of each scene pop and small details noticeable. What's more is that Chain Echo's map design reminds me a lot of when I explored the various biomes and labyrinths of The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, complete with hidden caves with treasure, and entrances to optional dungeons that might just hide a super powerful boss that you might not be ready to face. This feeling of exploration and peril is what I absolutely love and look forward to every time the narrative moves forward. And given how encounters are curated and meticulously designed, the whole experience of exploring these places is a masterclass of how you can take inspiration from games outside of your chosen genre to make it meaningful for all types of players. Tying the exploration together is a reward board that gives you additional money and loot, in addition to milestone prizes that lets you obtain items used to unlock new classes at Heroes of Leonar statues, or even additional points to buy brand new skills. Wrapping everything together is a masterful soundtrack by Eddie Marianukroh. Eddie's influences are clear as day here, especially if you've got an ear for classic JRPG soundtracks. The main theme's beginning, for instance, reminds me a lot of Chrono Cross, and when the main melodies all kick in shortly after, the feeling you get while listening to its sweeping tones evokes the spirit of adventure that the game promises from the get-go. Eddie's tracks are a testament to his knack for evoking specific emotions and feelings, and once you listen to any of his compositions, I've no doubt that they'll stick with you for a good, long while. Regardless of Chain Echoes being inspired by some of the best JRPGs from both the past and the present, the ultimate test for any game is whether or not it can stand up on its own. I'm happy to say that Chained Echoes does exactly that, and then some. Some people may be quick to dismiss the game because of its retro look or how it tells its story. But what cannot be denied is that Chained Echoes is an engaging and entertaining adventure that is absolutely worth taking on. The feeling of being swept from one locale to another, mixed in with fantastically designed forests, mountain ranges, and dungeons, which is tied together by systems that I can only describe as innovative, and you've got some truly fantastic times ahead. And to think that it comes at a fraction of the cost as most other JRPGs. Chain Echoes is easily a 30+ hour adventure that'll have you wanting more, and easily joins my list of recommendations as a must-play JRPG of 2022.